What's up, everybody? So this is I'm Stuart Bowman. I'm Stuart Bowman. You guys probably know me as the developer of Satellite.Earth. It's one of the main NIP72 community clients. So this talk is called Sub-Communities of Nostr. But I think after I came up with this title, I was like, I probably should have called it, I could have called it How Nostr Can Replace Reddit, or perhaps more ambitiously, Nostr as a network state, or how Nostr can replace Google, which I'm not sure which of those is more ambitious. But in any case, I don't really want to do like the classic programmer thing where I talk about like, where you have to like click on the screen, like start talking about JSON and stuff like that. So I'm going to resist that temptation, and I want to kind of talk about like kind of just like a strategic and theoretical perspective on what communities are and how they can sort of open up kind of like a new direction for Nostr to go that isn't a Twitter clone. Nothing against Twitter clones, but I think that the mass Reddit exodus that we saw, if you want to call it that, a couple months ago, where Reddit deleted the like shitcoin that they had been using for their communities, and a bunch of people came in here, and I think Derek Ross brought a bunch of people with his post on Reddit, but everybody showed up and were like, oh, this is great, but what sets Nostr apart? Why would I use this? And I think that's a really, really important question that we have to answer. And we need to think about this and sort of take very literally some ideas from physics and biology, oddly, which I want to get into. But before I do that, I kind of want to just talk about, like, just give people an impression, like a basic idea of like what communities are. So NIP72 is a NIP that was created by Vitor a few months ago, and essentially what it is it's a subreddit. It's a subreddit NIP. So you have an admin that can create a community, and then the admin can appoint moderators, and then the moderators are responsible for approving or disapproving posts that go into the community. So it's not a hashtag. It's not a list. It's not anything like that. It's its own thing because it has a kind of basic political structure. There's a leader, and the leader can delegate authority, and the authority is ultimately founded in the social consensus that this person should be the leader of that community. And so it's almost like kind of like a statefulness to it. And I think that's something that we need to really think about when we're designing these kind of things. So I'm going to see what my next slide is. Okay, there we go. So these are basically the communities, or these are the clients that have implemented communities so far. Other than Satellite, we have Nostr, which just published a big update. I think it was a couple days ago. It was really great. You should check it out. There's Nostr.kiwi from Jingles. There's Vivek, who made Zapped It. And then, of course, there's Amethyst that was created by Vitor, who created the NIP. So, yeah. This is some famous VC dude said this one time. I think it was Peter Thiel or something. But basically, the idea is that, like if you go to business school, which I've never have been, but I've heard that in business school they tell you, you should be competitive. You should make a competitive business or a competitive startup. Well, that's exactly backwards. You don't want to compete because you're going to waste all your energy competing. You want to do something where you don't have to compete. And so I think that when we're talking, like through the lens of how to replace Reddit, I think it's really important to lean into Nostr's strengths, so that we don't, because like we're not going to beat Reddit on terms of UI, despite how bad it is. We're not, because that's what people are used to. We're not going to beat it in terms of content because it has massive numbers of posters. But we might beat it in terms of the ability to actually pay moderators, have some kind of credibly neutral moderation, and also offering the ability to kind of like hold the private keys to your community. And that's like kind of like a next level of abstraction of holding your private keys to your own identity. So it's kind of interesting. One thing in particular, actually, that was just created recently that Bob's going to talk about in his talk, which is right after this one, actually, is Zap splits, or Zap Lightning Prism, or whatever it is. Anyways, basically what a Zap split is it allows you to send a single Lightning transaction and have multiple recipients. And this, when I was working on communities originally back in June, I don't think this was possible, or at least if it was, I wasn't aware of it. And then when this became possible, I was like, oh wow, this is really amazing, because it unlocks something that I'd been thinking about for a long time, was that, wouldn't it be great if we could pay moderators for the work that they do? And I think, the Bitcoin Nostr community kind of understands this value for value thing. Like, Reddit like coasted on free labor of moderators for like a decade. That's not really a sustainable business plan or anything. I think there was like a different era of the internet where there was like this large non-renewable resource of just goodwill that it was sort of like burned down by Reddit, ultimately deciding to rug their moderators and be like, oh, thanks for making this interesting place where everybody wants to go look at stuff. We're going to, insert some ads. And, oh, by the way, you've been removed as mod because you're not following our policies. That's insane. That's like building a business in like a rented room that people can just like, oh, your lease is up. Okay, bye. Well, thanks. So I think this idea of holding the keys to your community is something that's like, it's really an idea whose time has come. And you've seen centralized versions of it, like Discord. You've seen, I think Discord even has forum communities now, but so they're kind of getting the message, but they're still centralized. And no one has credibly offered in a way to be like, all these people have opted in cryptographically to me being the admin or the mod, so therefore that's like almost like social capital. I mean, it is social capital, quite literally. So actually, I want to go back to that real quick. Yeah, so in practice, how the Zap splits would work is that you would have a content creator post something in a community. You'd have a moderator responsible for approving that post. You'd have an admin responsible for appointing moderators, and you'd presumably have a platform like Satellite or one of those other clients that I mentioned, providing the code to facilitate all those interactions. And all those people probably should be getting paid, otherwise they're not going to be able to continue doing it without something like OpenSats or having some ads or something. So I think that one way it could work is that if I upvote sending a lightning zap to someone, maybe 25% of that could go to the content creator, 15% could go to the mods, and the remainder could go to the platform, or something like that. And if you as a user think that that is an unfair allocation, you need to have the option of going to a different fork of that community, and that's where forkability comes in. So I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole of this until I get to the biology thing, but basically, I think that communities are like DNA, where you have a sort of like system that is attempting to find the optimum balance. And what's really important about DNA is that it can fork and it can parallelize. And that's not something that Reddit can do easily, because if you want to start make your own subreddit, you have to just convince everyone to go to your new thing. There's not a clean way to do it. And that's one of the things that Nostr could do really, really well, because all the data is completely public and you could fork it at any point, like open source software. So I think that in the future there's going to be this kind of compositional open source, maybe it's not the right word, open data, open community movement, where you have people who are sort of voluntarily opting into being the manager, and they're deriving their position from the ongoing consent of the governed, as it were, or the consent of the moderated. Because you can just leave. It's like exit. You don't need to overthrow a ruler. You just, bye. So that's I think the ideal scenario. And again, none of this is implemented. This is a strategic and theoretical idea. I want to talk about what hopefully we can do in the next 6 to 12 months. So yeah, transparency goes without saying. If you go on Satellite, you can see a mod queue of the posts that are not approved yet. So you can even opt into censorship, which might be something you want if spam is what's getting censored. So I mean, I don't want to see spam all day. So I want to talk about SEO Apocalypse. This is kind of like through the lens of how Nostr can replace Google search specifically. I mean, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but if you try to find like product reviews online and you just type in like, what's the best mattress, you're not going to find the truth. You're going to find a bunch of blog spam. And that is what Google has done. That is Google's legacy of the internet, is they've forced the internet into the reflection of their PageRank algorithm. So that's not sustainable, and Google's search is kind of done anyways because of AI. And if you sort of like back up and think about what is like the fundamental thing going on, is that there's a loss of credible signal of what is quality. Like no one actually knows what's true. The last bastion of what was actually true was Reddit. And that's why people, when they search for stuff, usually append Reddit to the end of a search query, because you want to find some type of organic discussion about whatever it is you're interested in. But Reddit, that's kind of has a clock ticking on it as well, because Reddit is following the path that pretty much all other social networks are following, which is they're just moving into being like content delivery, entertainment delivery vehicles. And that's not really social media per se. It's media. It's like media in the sense that TikTok is media, but it's not like interaction, it's not discussion. That was what Reddit was really good at. So that opens up a huge niche for Nostr if we can sort of recapture some of that organic stuff. And I think we can, because we have Lightning, and we have Web of Trust, and we have an open social graph, and we can derive, if not directly, indirectly, and transparently, credibility metrics that can be used to modulate other data sets, like what search results come up. So I'm not going to build Google, but I do think theoretically over time, Google might, or whatever that replaces Google, might end up using something like Nostr as one of the main data sets to derive its content rank algorithm. So we should lean into that. Okay, so the other apocalypse is the AI apocalypse. I don't mean like, this is not like the Eliezer Yudowski apocalypse. This is like the I can't find what I'm looking for because everything is ChatGPT bullshit apocalypse, which I think is way worse, personally. This is already here. Like if you go on like Twitter or whatever it is, X now, and you like half the replies are like ChatGPT, and you can tell because it's like this really boring kind of writing. And this is just something that exacerbates the SEO apocalypse. So my point is, this is like the nail in the coffin. And there might be times in which you want AI to generate stuff, but that should be something that communities or people who want to opt into communities and search for that specific kind of content can find, if that's what they're looking for. So I think ultimately there's really no way around AI other than to fight AI with AI. And this brings me to the idea of like the Red Queen, which is this, I think it was like I can't remember who's coined it. It's like a phrase by, I can't remember the name of the biologist who coined this term, but basically it's the idea that nature or all evolutionary iterative systems are kind of locked in a kind of metastatic equilibrium. And I say metastatic because things are always changing, but the relationship among the things remains relatively constant. And its Red Queen is a reference to Alice in Wonderland, where it's like she's always running, but she's staying in the same place. So like this is like, the wolf that gets better at finding the rabbit, and the rabbit gets more camouflaged, and then the wolf gets even better eyesight, and then it gets even more camouflaged. So it's like this little arms race. So something like that's definitely going to happen with AI content generation, spam generation, and AI content moderation and detection of spam. And so this is already here, but fortunately, Nostr is definitely going to win this because we have proof of work notes. So as long as our Red Queen is, basically my point is this metastatic equilibrium is good for us because we can tilt the playing field however much we need to tilt it with proof of work notes. So like even if it's 10 times harder to detect spam than it is to generate it, well, we just need to increase the nonce difficulty for a note so that it becomes expensive to generate spam. So as long as we're within an order of magnitude in the generation detection arms race, we'll be fine. And that's one of the things that I think communities are probably Nostr as a whole is going to adopt is like you have to make it a little bit expensive to try to generate spam. But anyways, I see this as really good news, and I think that we can continue building communities. And this is probably, and like, unless anyone has any better ideas, I think that's our best defense, is AI moderation pre-filtered with proof of work, and then with humans being the ultimate arbiter of what is allowed. And that kind of takes me to a side point, which is like, I think probably one of the last jobs that's going to be replaced by AI automation is people like tax preparers, because they're not really getting paid for filling out forms. They're getting paid for being willing to get in trouble if they make a mistake. So you're getting paid for liability or for responsibility, as it were. So moderators are in a similar position. Like, I can totally see in the future a community moderated mostly by AI that you can appeal, say like, this AI is stupid, it banned me because I said this, but I shouldn't be banned. And you talk to a human, they're like, okay, yeah, we'll let you in. So I think that's probably what it's going to look like, is it's going to be human moderators delegating power to AIs and then acting as like the appeals court of the AI, which is fine, because I think like in general, we have to do this. You can't have humans doing all the work because the spam is going to be generated by AI. So we need to realize, like, as long as we're living in like a human-led community, that's fine. And then the ultimate check on that is people can just exit and go to a totally different fork. So we have like multiple redundant levels of democratic oversight on this. So yeah, the social layer. Let me see here what I was talking about. Yeah, so I think like ultimately, let me see here. So I used to study physics. One of my professors told me one time, like in terms of the question, like, what is energy? He said, like, energy is like something you can put in just different buckets. So there's like mechanical energy, there's electrical energy, there's chemical energy, but ultimately energy is energy. It's fungible. You can transform it, but you can't create it, you can't destroy it, right? So I think capital is like that. It's kind of like a direct analog. There's different forms of capital. There's capital, which I think is like maybe called liquid capital. We could think of it that way. Fiat capital, crypto capital, social capital. Basically, the ability to get things done. So, like one lens to look at this is that over the last 15 years, centralized platforms have been really good at transforming social capital to liquid capital. And this is that free labor thing. It's what influencers are. Influencers are a conduit, a transformation, an engine that transforms social capital to liquid capital. Or you can run it in reverse. You can transform, if you have money, you can buy ads, you can transform liquid capital to social capital. I mean, there's energy loss, there's inefficiency, it's not 100%, but that's conceptually, I think, what's going on. So I think that's a way to look at this lightning thing, is that instead of selling ads, we should probably allow people to pay moderators and community members and admins and everything. It's sort of like, because we want to transform liquid capital back to social capital, because the world's social capital is like, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but it's like running on empty, because it's all been like degraded by systems that are really good at doing that. So it's like an electric motor. Like if you add energy to an electric motor, it creates mechanical energy. But the same device is a generator. If you turn it, it creates electrical energy. So that's kind of an interesting image, I think, that we should take seriously. Yeah, so I guess at the end of my presentation, I just want to talk about kind of like, so I have like a really long to-do list of a bunch of stuff. Just throwing this out there. These are just like some ideas I think that communities could be, would be really good use cases for communities. Hopefully some other devs will jump on this. Eventually I'll probably do this, but I think like a Google Maps community would be amazing. And I saw yesterday somebody posted like a Maps client, which I thought was amazing. I think communities are probably a great fit for that because it's local. Like you could have like a Craigslist type thing, like local marketplaces. You could have Yelp. So reviews would be like Yelp, Product Hunt, things like that. Like anything that needs moderation. And then like Wikipedia. You could have a community where posts were edits. So I think that's pretty much everything. And yeah, if you guys want to follow me, this is my Dama's QR code thingy, and satellite.earth is my client. You guys can keep an eye on that, and I'll probably end up. I'm going to use satellite as kind of like the test bed for all these kind of crazy ideas. We'll see if they actually work. But probably the first thing I'm going to do is zap splits, because I think that's just like a killer application. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. If there's anyone has any questions, I'm not sure how much time I have left, but I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I could take a question. Anyone got one? Yeah, Dread.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know if I missed it earlier, but what are your thoughts around the current implementation of encrypted chats, whether they're encrypted groups, if you want a private community, or encrypted DMs?
That's a really good question. So I think like I have this idea that probably what's going to happen with social networks is that they're going to bifurcate into public and private spheres, where you have a kind of like totally public networks where it's all about, it's kind of adversarial in some sense. And then you have people, basically things you post to get reach. And there's going to be trusted groups like encrypted signal chats, which are for your friends. And that seems like that's where we're heading, but ideally we would want to have some kind of integration of those two. Like, what's that word? Like, I think there's like some quote that like the path to progress is usually the integration of opposites. And I think that is probably true here too, that if we can successfully integrate the private group and the public's kind of place where you can post to get followers and get visibility, then that would be really great progress. On a concrete level, I mean, you could totally add private group chats to communities. It'd be really simple. It would just be like how Reddit has like a Discord server for communities. I think that probably separating private group chats from Nostr protocol makes sense, because there's no reason to globally duplicate all private messages. There's different ideas about that. Some people have talked about messaging layer security, and some people have talked about, there's Simple X, which is a super weird name, but seems to be a really great protocol. I just don't know that much about it, to be honest, but that's definitely going to happen at some point.
Cool. Stuart.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.